threw away our wedding rings after I playfully teased him on a preparty with our best friends.
Hello, Reddit. My name is Emily, and I'm 28 years old. I'm a chef, and I'm in need of your advice desperately. You see, I have a fiancé, Simon, whom I'm supposed to be marrying in 4 days, but I haven't heard anything from him, not even a text. I've tried several times to reach out to him, but he has blocked every means of me doing so. My fiancé had been upset, and he threw our wedding rings away after I playfully mocked him at a pre-party with our best friends, and I haven't seen or heard from him since then. He had literally ended things with me at our pre-party. We had decided to have a pre-party because we didn't want to have separate bachelor's or bachelorette parties, especially because I didn't trust things that went on those nights. So instead of having separate parties with our friends, we decided to have a pre-party where we could have it combined. But I decided to have it a week before our wedding because I didn't want to be a drunk bride or be nursing headaches on my wedding day. I had wanted everything to go perfectly. Well, not so perfect now that my groom is missing a few days before our wedding. I'm so scared. I cannot not have a wedding. I love Simon too much to lose him. I really need some advice on how to get him back. Simon had gotten really upset because our friends and I were mocking him, but it had only been playfully. Everyone had even laughed at the jokes I made about him, and they also made jokes of their own. But Simon had been so angry about the whole thing. He just went inside our room, picked up our wedding rings, and threw them out the window. I had been so shocked when he also said he was done with the whole thing, that there was no wedding happening, and he even mentioned a shocking reason why he wouldn't marry me anymore in front of all our friends, who now all probably think of me as a snake, and that I really ought to be abandoned at the altar. You see, the thing that happened that got Simon upset hadn't been only because of the mocking. Simon had found out about my dirty secret and past, and now he wants nothing to do with me anymore. It hadn't been my fault. I know I had done something very preposterous, but I just thought it would never come out, and that Simon would never find out about it. Now he has, and I'm so confused, upset, and scared of losing everything I've always dreamed of and worked towards because of this. I had met Simon, my fiancé, when he came to eat at my restaurant. It had been during the lunch break hour that I usually give my workers, and they had all gone to do their own thing. I had just sat around reading through a recipe book I had just gotten the day before when he walked in and requested food. I had wanted to tell him that it was our lunch break, but I kept quiet about it and decided to make him something to eat instead because he looked so tired and hungry, and he looked devastatingly handsome. I didn't want to turn him away. It was after he had finished eating and was paying that my staff walked in, and he realized that he had imposed on my lunch break. He apologized profusely and offered to make it up to me, and when I refused, he insisted and invited me to have lunch with him to make up for it. He suggested my restaurant as the venue, which made me laugh because before he suggested my restaurant, I had started to feel insulted that he would invite me to lunch outside when I had a restaurant of my own. The next day, he showed up as promised, and we had lunch together. Our conversation had been very nice, and I found myself talking about things I usually wouldn't, especially with strangers. When the lunch break ended, he collected my number and promised to call. I remember so well that I found myself waiting excitedly for his call that evening, but he didn't call. He also didn't show up the next day, and I found myself thinking about him. I even almost burned myself in the kitchen that day because of my distracting thoughts. He called 2 days after, though, and we spoke for a long time. He apologized for not calling the day before as promised. That was the beginning of our friendship. We were friends for 1 month before we started dating. We knew all of each other's friends, and we even started hanging out together, especially on weekends when I did not open up my shop. Simon is an executive director at his father's company, which is currently being overseen by his brother Peter. Somehow, he and his brother work in the same company and still have the best relationship as brothers. Neither wants to exert authority over the other or fight for ownership rights. I found it weird at first when I discovered that the company's CEO was actually Simon's younger brother. When I asked why he wasn't the one heading the company, he told me he was never really interested in the family business. He only worked there because his father kept insisting, and working as a director rather than the CEO meant he could quit whenever he felt like it. I wasn't satisfied with the conclusion he made about it. I had always felt that if you had to do something, whether it be a matter of interest or not, why not just go for the best regardless? But Simon was so content with his position, I knew no words of mine would change his mind. I tried, though, several times in fact, but Simon could be quite adamant when he chooses to be. I had always been quite stubborn myself. I left home at the age of 17 because I hadn't wanted to attend college at all, and I haven't been back since, not even to see my parents. My parents loved me so much, especially because I was their only child, and they always thought they knew what was best for me. They wanted me to go to a college of their choosing and study to become a doctor, but I refused. They later agreed to a compromise among themselves and told me I could go to a college of my choosing and pick any course I wanted. But when I told them I didn't want to go to college at all, but instead a cooking school so I could become a certified chef, my parents flipped. They maintained the stand that becoming a chef, especially one who stands out, would be difficult, and it wasn't exactly a lucrative job, but I disagreed. When I realized that my parents weren't going to change their minds about college, I ran away from home. Barely an adult and already on the street with literally no money except the ones I took from my parents was challenging. I had to sleep on the streets and keep moving because I had no choice. I barely traveled before I left home, and when I did travel, it was always with my parents, so I knew nowhere. I sold almost everything I had with me just to be able to feed, and luckily for me, I met a friend who took me home to her parents. When they asked about my parents, I lied that they were dead, and that my uncle wanted me to start working as a maid for a rich man, so I had run away from home. Princess's parents took me in, and I was grateful for it. I stayed with them and then got a part-time job so I could save up money. Princess had a brother, David. He had been my first boyfriend. Because we stayed together, it had been easy to indulge in sexual activities without anyone knowing or suspecting us. He had been my first. He taught me all there was to know about sex. I was obviously not his first. And the craziest thing had been that his parents couldn't find out because, to them, he was a saint who was to remain chaste and pure, and was actually even preparing to go to seminary school. They had no idea who their son really was, but eventually they found out about David and me, and they had been so livid. I took all the blame as they threw me out, and I was again out on the streets. But luckily enough, I had saved enough money to rent a room. The room was damp and leaked at very annoying places when it rained, and it was extremely cold at night, especially because I had no bedding, but I had no choice at the time. I got another part-time job as a waitress in a club, and the outfits we were given were quite short and seductive. I was only 20 at the time, but I had the sexy body of a 26-year-old. I'm not proud of admitting this, but I did sleep with different men for money. I didn't enjoy the sexual part, but I did enjoy the financial aspect. It's crazy how much money men are willing to give just to get down with you. I charged plenty for sex, and I got it. Once I had enough to get by, I got a better apartment, and I also paid for my cooking class. But I continued sleeping with men even though I already had enough to open up my shop after I got certified. I guess I got greedy for the easy money. I got my certificate, and funnily, I still did not stop sleeping with men, especially older ones, until I met a very rich, crazy guy. Greg and I met at the club I frequented so I could get men interested in me. He had not been that much older, but he was really rich, and had asked that I become his mistress exclusively, and I agreed greedily. Greg spoiled me silly with money, and within 2 weeks of knowing him, I had bought myself a house and also a shop for my cooking. But the problem was Greg was very possessive and also aggressive. Whenever he went through my phone and saw my messages, even if they were older messages from other guys, he would get so angry and beat me up until I was bloody, and then he would have forceful sex with me. It was like he enjoyed my mumbled cries, like it turned him on. He would apologize for his actions after the whole thing with a lot of gifts. He would give me lots of money and buy me gifts to make up for his actions, and I continued enduring his abuse because of the luxurious lifestyle I got to have in return. We were together 3 months before I eventually had to run away when Greg almost killed me because a guy just winked at me when he took me with him to the club. He dragged me home that day, beat me up so much, and then had forceful sex as usual. But this time he still didn't stop at that. He continued to beat me up and have sex again throughout the night. I fainted twice during the whole thing, and when it was morning and he left on a work emergency, I managed to drag myself out and catch a cab to the hospital. After I was treated, I hid from Greg for 2 whole weeks. He kept calling, and at first he was pleading, but later he started threatening me. But I was done at that point. I wanted nothing to do with him, and luckily for me, he did not know about the house I purchased. Since it was in a kind of rural area, he wouldn't think to look for me there. After 2 months passed successfully, Greg stopped the threatening messages, and I was finally free to go out. I started with my restaurant, I bought the necessary equipment I needed, and I employed staff. Business was slow at first, but eventually I got the boost I needed. Even though my restaurant was a big hit, in that locality, I couldn't afford to expand further because I was scared Greg would find me, so I stuck with what I was doing. On weekends, I never go to the restaurant. I made those my rest days. Although my staff did, they opened up and attended to customers on weekends. I never told Simon about Greg in my past. I wanted it to stay as my dirty, hidden past and never to surface again. And I maintained the same story about my parents being dead with him, too. I feared that if he knew about my parents, he'd realize the rest of my past, too. And I didn't want that. I wanted him to continue seeing me as the perfect and amazing person he thought me as, and not the shady person I actually was. Simon and I dated for 2 years before he proposed to me, and during the duration of those 2 years, he was just the sweetest boyfriend ever. He took care of my needs regardless of the fact that I could do that on my own. He made sure I was happy, and he always spoiled me with gifts. On weekends when we weren't with our friends, we went on dates, and the dates were always so much fun. I usually looked forward to them. Simon wanted me to expand my restaurant, but I refused and lied to him that it was just because I was content with what I had going on. He was not convinced, but I was pretty adamant about it, so he gave up on it. Our first argument had been at this fundraising event he invited me to. Every year, his father's company held this fundraising event for orphanages across the country, and many wealthy people were always invited to donate. Most people did that not because they cared about the orphanages, but because they wanted to be seen as good people who cared. But either way, they still gave, and that helped a lot of orphans across the country. Simon invited me as his plus one, and I rejected the offer, not because I hadn't wanted to go, but because I was scared I would see Greg there since he was also among the wealthy people. Simon had been really upset when I kept giving silly excuses for why I couldn't go, and he told me he would have to go with his personal assistant, whom I loathed. The lady made no effort to hide her interest in Simon, and it usually pissed me off. I told Simon a whole lot of times that I didn't want her around, but apparently his father had employed her, and he couldn't just dismiss her for no reason because she was pretty good at her job. I accused him of wanting to cheat on me, and we fought about it. I eventually decided to go to the event because I didn't want that lady anywhere around Simon at an event like that and be mistaken as his woman and not his staff. Simon and I went to the event, but I was so nervous and kept looking around to check if Greg was there so I could get a heads up and avoid him. Eventually, halfway through the event, I saw no one like him, and I relaxed slightly. Simon thought my being anxious was because I saw a lot of people I usually only had seen on TV or social media. Simon tried to make me relax and introduce me to a few people, but then he had to leave me to attend to an important business partner of theirs. So I sat alone, sipping my champagne slowly so I didn't get drunk, when a man sat beside me and clinked his glass with mine. I was surprised, and when I looked closely, he looked so much like Simon. Before that, I had only ever heard of Simon's brother. I had never met him because he was mostly at the headquarters of their company, which was situated in another country. So when he introduced himself, I connected the dots and realized who he was. I tried to behave politely with him, but he kept flirting with me outrageously. I knew he probably didn't know I was with his brother, and when I opened my mouth to tell him just that, Simon reappeared and playfully asked his brother to back off from his woman. Peter, realizing who I was, still didn't stop flirting with me. I knew he desired me strongly from past experiences with men like that, but Simon didn't seem to know that because he thought his brother was just playing around. I was happy I didn't have to meet him again after the party, so I smiled through it all. But I was so wrong because Peter showed up at my restaurant the week after. He flirted more with me, and I told him clearly that I was with his brother and wouldn't entertain his flirting. But Peter didn't stop his attempts. He would send me flowers every morning to my restaurant and even to my house with notes attached, sometimes saying how beautiful he thought I was, or how much he desired me. Other times, he sent me gifts like a beautiful dress, shoes, or jewelry. I didn't tell Simon about it because I hadn't wanted to cause a fight between him and his brother, knowing how much he adored his little brother. I continued accepting his gestures, and eventually, when he invited me out on a lunch date, I agreed, with the intention of telling him to stop with the gifts. But the lunch date turned out to be so much fun that I agreed to another one, and that was dinner. Peter had a way with words, and he flirted easily, making me feel beautiful. Simon never ceased telling me how beautiful he thought I was, and I've always had compliments like that. But somehow, the way Peter just says it draws me in. I started spending more time with Peter than I did with Simon. I'd make excuses of busy days just to go on dates with Peter. I hadn't wanted to tell Simon about meeting up with his brother because it would seem odd no matter how much he'd want us to get along. Hanging out as often as we did would definitely arouse his suspicion. Eventually, Peter got his wish. I slept with him. It had been a drunken mistake the first time. He called me that evening saying he was feeling very down and wanted a friend around, specifically me. He asked if he could come over to my place. I couldn't say no to him when he sounded like that, so I agreed, and he came carrying drinks. We drank and talked, and before long I was really tipsy, and everything else happened in a blur. The next thing I became conscious of was the fact that I was on the bed, and Peter was beside me, naked. I begged him to keep it a secret and insisted it couldn't happen again because I was with his brother, and he agreed at first. In fact, he stayed away for a week, but he eventually came back, wanting us to just have casual sex with nothing attached since I wasn't yet married to his brother. I agreed to it. I know. I did a stupid thing, but I really don't know why I accepted the offer. I loved Simon very much, and I knew quite well that I was not in love with Peter. But somehow, I just kept finding myself in bed with Peter. I even stopped having sex with Simon because of that. I guess I thought that would somehow ease my guilt. On my 28th birthday, Simon proposed to me. I had planned not to have a big party. I just wanted something simple, like staying indoors all day and eating the cake I baked. But Simon kept insisting we go out for dinner, so I reluctantly agreed. He prepared everything. I just had to show up for the dinner. When I got there and we had our order taken, on the plate, instead of food, was the million-dollar question. Will you marry me? I was so happy and almost cried. I love Simon, and spending the rest of my life with him would be my biggest dream come true. We planned to have our wedding in 2 months, so we had enough time to make everything perfect. It had been my suggestion, actually. Simon was happy to follow through with anything as long as the whole thing ended with me being his wife. Peter had not been too happy when he heard about Simon's proposal, though, but I did not mind. We were only messing around to me, and who I married was not his concern. Well, that was until I heard Peter started to object to our relationship. He wanted to create doubt in Simon's mind so that he wouldn't marry me. I had been so upset, and I had threatened to end things between us if he didn't stop trying to ruin my relationship with his brother, and he agreed not to mention anything like that to his brother again. Trouble came when I finally met Greg again. Apparently he was a friend of Peter's, and he had seen Peter and me together, and Peter had told him about his brother and me and also his involvement with me. Perhaps to brag about the fact that he could have any woman he wanted to his friend, but he did not know he was digging me a trap. How I knew all this? Well, Greg came to see me and he threatened me with the information he knew about Peter and me. I eventually ended up sleeping with him again just to cover up my secret. It was hard having to juggle two guys I was having sex with and my real relationship together, but I couldn't risk Simon finding out about them both, and the only way to keep them quiet had been having sex with them both. Simon started to suspect my involvement with Peter when he stumbled on my earrings, one he bought for me, in Peter's house. When he asked about the earrings, I lied that it was not mine. Simon had not said anything else, and I thought he had forgotten about it until the day we planned to go out for lunch with his parents, and he asked me to wear that exact pair of earrings he bought for me. I had to come up with an excuse that I had another pair in mind to use. Whether or not he believed me, I don't know. My guess is he doubted me, but Simon hated confrontation, so he just kept quiet about it. And he was quiet all through lunch with his parents, which was unusual. Even his parents noticed. Some days after that, Simon started insisting on dates for Peter. He would go as far as setting up blind dates for him, and he didn't even have to lift a finger because their mom did all the work. He had only told her that since he was getting married, Peter should also have someone he's dating seriously as well. Peter, who wanted nothing but casual sex, was frustrated with his brother's deliberate actions to get him a woman. At that point, I knew Peter must have wondered if his brother knew just how much casual sex he was involved in. Simon and I started to plan for our wedding. Well, it was mostly me doing all the planning. Simon just went along with everything I said. He had been behaving weirdly towards me ever since the earrings incident, and I had been scared to ask what the matter was because I feared I wouldn't like the response. Greg finally traveled out of the state, and I was happy because that meant he would leave me be. Peter and I, although, continued our affair. I told him that we would stop messing around once I was married, and he agreed to it, saying he didn't even like messing around with married women. So I planned our pre-party, sent out invitations to our friends. My friends mainly consisted of the people I had cooking class with, and we kept in contact ever since. I did everything I felt was necessary for things to go smoothly. A day before our party, Simon asked me a weird question. He asked what my take on cheating was, especially between couples that had been together for a while, and I said what everyone would normally say just to avoid suspicion. I told him that I would not accept any excuse for cheating and that I probably would never forgive him. and Simon nodded and agreed with what I said. When I asked why he asked, he told me he knew someone who did such, and the partner had asked for his advice on what to do. I relaxed slightly, thinking it was not me Simon suspected. Our pre-party came, and I was even excited. Not minding Simon's strange change in mood, I was having fun. I even participated in the games my friends played. I was asked at one point to dance seductively with Simon. Simon just stood there watching me do my thing. Having worked in a club for some time, a friend I made who was a stripper had taught me to dance, so it was quite easy for me to dance with Simon. Simon still had not smiled or anything, just watched me. I decided in my head that I was going to ask him what the matter was after the party, and I continued partying hard. Soon my friends and I started teasing and talking about sex as a married couple. The guys joined in the conversation, and we began to laugh about our silly marriage jokes. Then one of my friends jokingly asked a question. She asked what I would do if Simon was not able to satisfy me when we finally married, and then I found someone who could. It had been a joke. We were all just playing around. In fact, everyone laughed at the question except Simon. He remained quiet, and the warning bells in my head should have rung at that moment. But stupid me went along with the joke, and I told them that I was sure Simon would do fine, but if he didn't, I would probably find an assistant for him. I meant it as a joke. The guys laughed, knowing it was, but clearly Simon did not see it that way, and he just got up, went inside our room, and came back out with our wedding rings that we had purchased together the week after he proposed, and he flung them out the window. I was so shocked, and he turned to face me, telling me in front of our friends that he was done with the whole relationship. He told me that he thought he could go along with everything and not mind all the lies I told because he felt if we did get married, I'd change because that was how much he stupidly loved me. But with the jokes I had been making, he realized he couldn't bear marrying a woman who felt it normal to cheat on him with his brother and his friend. I was so shocked and could not utter a single word then. Simon knew. He knew everything about what I thought was a secret. Apparently, he had come across a woman who looked very much like me on one of his work visits, and he had curiously carried out a private investigation on me, and that was before the earring incident. He had found out everything, including the lies I told about my parents, and the ones about how I got money for my business, and the fact that I was cheating on him with his brother and his brother's friend Greg, who also happened to be my ex. He looked at me with disgust in his eyes, then shook his head and walked out. I did not mind that my friends and his friends had heard everything, and that they were whispering. All that rang through my head was the fact that Simon just broke up with me a week before our wedding, and that I was losing the only man I loved. It felt surreal, and I couldn't believe it. It's been a whole 3 days with no word from Simon. He blocked off every means of reaching out to him, too. I'm so scared, guys. I cannot lose Simon. Not now, not ever. Please, guys. I really need your advice on what to do. How do I get Simon to forgive me and continue with our wedding plans? I am desperate, please. Update. Hello, Reddit. It really is upsetting what you guys think of me and how much of it you're willing to let me know. To say I've been depressed is an understatement to how I feel when I got to see what you guys think of me. It's obvious you guys hate me, and well, it's not exactly surprising, but I could bet you guys do not feel as much hate for myself as I do. Your painful and hurtful comments actually made me sit back and think of just how stupid I've been. I thought I could eat my cake and have it. I thought I could get away with cheating on Simon and get away with it. I thought I could still get married to him after all the lies and hurtful things I did to him. My wedding day has already passed, and yet I am still unmarried. I wore my wedding dress, went to church, and waited a whole day for my groom who never showed up. I did the same thing the next day and the day after until I was forced out of the church. My life really is ruined. I destroyed the one good thing about my ugly life. I should have never hidden anything from Simon. I should have told him exactly what happened with him. I should have told him about his brother's persistent wooing and about Greg's threats. Perhaps I would not be in this mess I am. I would have probably gotten married to him now and been wearing my wedding ring. I found them where Simon threw them after searching for a day. The ring is my perfect size. It was a beauty that I fell in love with at first sight, but now even the ring isn't fitted on me anymore. Perhaps I have lost weight. I wouldn't know. I've broken all the mirrors in my house so I didn't have to look at myself because of how much disgust I felt toward myself. I feel so heartbroken, and I beat myself up mentally every day, regretting everything I did. I am so alone, with no one, absolutely no one on my side. I wish so desperately that I had not hurt Simon as much as I did. I have no idea what Simon did to Peter after the whole thing, but I guess no matter how much they'd fight about it, they would end up maybe reconciling again. But I'm willing to bet with my life that my parents would probably want nothing to do with me. They probably already think I'm dead. I left home on my own accord and had to hit the streets, sleep with different men for money. I feel so dirty. Scrubbing my skin until it turns so red doesn't even cut it at all. It doesn't wash away the disgust I feel for myself. After all the crazy things I did in my past, I still found someone who loved me unconditionally. He had still been willing to get married to me after finding out about my past, and yet I still managed to even destroy that one good thing about my life. These past few weeks of self-reflection on my actions have been torturous. I've cried so much I feel like my tear glands have become faulty. They just keep leaking without being forced to. They are doing so right now, too. My life feels so empty. I haven't even opened up my restaurant in weeks. I've probably lost all my customers to another place, but I don't even care about it. I just literally lost everything good about my life in less than 10 minutes, and now my whole life has crumbled. I wish so desperately that I could rewrite my wrongs. I wish I had not. I wish for so many things, but they probably won't happen, right? I'm forever stuck in this hellhole I created for myself. It hurts so badly. I wonder if hell is more suitable than living this life right now. I guess my life on Earth is worse than hell. Update. Hello, Reddit. It's me again. This is possibly my very last post here. Just wanted to say thank you. Even if I had no support from you guys at all, even though all I got were insults, they still were at least something. At least I got that instead of the silence that just seems like a constant in my life now. My life is not improving. Still the same hellhole as it was before. I still have no Simon in my life, so I guess nothing else is worth anything. I still beat myself up mentally for everything I did. I still hate myself. Whoever said pain healed with time definitely did not know about my own situation, because it keeps getting worse by the moment. It's like my chest keeps constricting painfully each day. It hurts really badly every day I have to wake up and face the harsh reality of having no Simon. Even my dreams are haunted by the sweet memories of him and what could have been but never would be. It's really painful, because I know I did all of this to myself. I know I will never find peace within myself, and I will forever carry this burden of guilt around for the rest of my life. I'm even willing to live with the guilt and pain for the rest of my life if it would ease just even a fraction of the hurt I caused Simon. I know he will eventually move on and get married to another woman who isn't me, obviously. That thought alone just messes up my mind and gives me painful panic attacks. This hell I created for myself. Is there really any saving from it?
Hello, guys. I am faced with a tough decision right now, and I don't know whether to follow my heart or follow my mind. My heart is saying something else, and it is something I have longed for, and my mind is telling me I am making a very big mistake. I left my husband for my high school crush. I didn't think it was a bad thing to do because I had always loved him, and I wanted to find happiness after a long time. My name is Beth, and I am a 28-year-old lady. I'm a real estate developer. I love what I do. It has been my passion for many years. The name of my husband is William, and he is 32 years old. Willem is an engineer, and we have been married for 4 years now. The relationship between me and William is not a normal one. Yes, we got married, but we didn't know each other, or let me say we weren't each other's first choice at that point. William and I got married because I had thought it was the right thing to do, because William was going to give me stability, and I need that in my life. But looking back now, it wasn't a good decision. I wasn't really in love with William. I was only in love with the idea that came with him. Indeed, we dated for a couple of months before marriage, but I wasn't really paying attention. But after marriage, I saw that William was not really who or what I had thought. He was very dominating, like he had to know everything about me, which I didn't sign up for. I thought he was going to be calm and collected, but he wasn't. He was always in my business telling me what to do. It was getting too much for me, and I had to do something about it. I always thought maybe that was his own way of showing me love, but I did not understand. William and I, irrespective of our differences, we still found a way for us to be together in front of the world. We could go out for dinner and parties. I tried on different bases to connect with him, but it wasn't working because I had my heart somewhere else. I can say that I never really got over my high school crush because he meant everything to me. I had his pictures cut out in my room when I was still in school. People could say I was a stalker, but I didn't mind because I was in love. William and I never really agreed on many things, but the one thing we agreed on was our love for my father. My father was an exceptional man who saw William like a son he never had. They had a type of bond. I I am so happy for them. Whenever William comes around, my father's face lights up like he had won a jackpot, and it hasn't been like that since I could remember. They got to catch up after a long time, and I appreciate William always trying to spend time with him. My mother was also a fan of William, which, by the way, she points out every time. We had dinner with my parents, and we talked about a lot of things. My parents kept talking about how I was as a baby to William, and I never really got the point. William was a different kind of person whenever he was with my family. He was always appearing relaxed, but in the outside world, he was this type of no-nonsense man. Dinner went well at my parents' place, and we left. The following morning, I woke up with a reminder ringing on my phone. I looked at it and saw it was the day of our anniversary. We have been married for 3 years now officially. I didn't know whether I should be happy or disappointed to find out that William left me a note saying I should dress appropriately for dinner that day. I decided to not let it spoil my mood, and I got ready for work. Throughout the day, I decided not to think about it, but deep in my heart, I wanted to receive at least a call from him, but I didn't get any. I got home to prepare for the dinner, and William came to pick me up a few moments later, so it turned out that the dinner wasn't even planned by him. It was his assistant. I knew she had her eyes on William right from the very beginning, because she could try to condemn me with every given opportunity. She would look at me in a certain way, which gave out jealousy. But I never gave her the satisfaction of getting to me. But today, I felt very foolish because my husband was seeking the help of his assistant for our anniversary dinner. The food was not to my liking because everything was badly put together, and I was allergic to almost everything on the plate. But I tried to explain to William, but he thought I was not being grateful. Our anniversary dinner ended up with us arguing about how he gave his assistant our anniversary to plan, instead of him to do it himself, or ask me for my help, and he knew we weren't on good terms. He saw it as me being jealous, and I left there because I didn't want to say something I could regret. I decided to pay Mel a visit because I knew she was capitalizing on the kind of relationship I had with William to drive us further apart. I confronted her, to which she denied innocently. I knew she was just trying to mess with me and get under my skin, but I didn't give her the satisfaction. I warned her to back off, or it was not going to end well for her. I went home and I saw William nursing a drink. I made him understand that it was not okay for him to let his assistant in our home. It wasn't okay for someone he had a romantic relationship with to plan our dinner. And he kept saying he wasn't involved with her, but I never believed him, because that was not the impression I was getting from his assistant. Because my mind kept telling me there was more. For the next couple of days, I didn't find William at home. I assumed that he had ghosted me the way he usually does after an argument. At that point, I didn't care, because I knew what he did was unacceptable. I called my best friend Brenda because I needed to speak to someone, and she was my go-to friend. Brenda and I have been best friends since we could walk, and we didn't hide anything from each other. I told her what happened between me and William, and she told me I should have handled it better. But I was angry as to why he could give an important thing, as our anniversary, to his assistant, who clearly did not like me. At the end of the day, I felt relieved. I was able to talk to her, and that's why I loved her. She took me out to dinner, and we got to catch up after a long time. Brenda, between the two of us, got the very best in life. She married the love of her life. She had 3 beautiful children, and I sometimes envy her. It was a few weeks later, and things were back together between me and my husband, William. We were doing a lot of things in order for us to fix our relationship. We agreed to go to therapy because we were not heading to a good place. But after a lot of therapy, we discovered that we were both not putting in the work in our relationship, and we didn't respect each other. After the whole therapy, we got to know more about each other's feelings, and we started working on it. After a few months, we were making progress, and I was in my office one morning when I received a call from an unknown number. I was skeptical about receiving it because I don't like speaking with strangers, but when I answered the call, I heard a voice I haven't heard in almost 20 years. It was the voice of my high school crush, Jimmy. I was in a total shock, and I didn't know what to say. I was so happy that we started catching up right away. It felt like old times, and Jimmy had told me he got my number from a mutual friend, and that he was in the city, and he had liked to see me. I was happy. I was going to see him after a long time, and we set a date for us to see each other. My mood for the whole day changed after that phone call. I went home that day with every intention of telling my husband about the call I received. I told William about it, and he quickly shut it down, and I was taken aback. I actually told him how close I was to Jimmy, and he told me I was married, and I shouldn't be going to see my high school crush. I didn't listen to him because I thought we were working on our relationship, and he should have had a little faith in me that I wasn't going to do anything I was not supposed to. But either way, I made plans to see my high school crush anyway. I met up with Jimmy, and he had changed a lot. We talked about a lot of things, and at that moment, everything was perfect. I told Jimmy I was married, and he kept flirting with me like he always did back then in school. I suggested that since he was in town, we should see each other more often. I always loved his company back then, and even now. The following day, I told Brenda about Jimmy, and she was excited too, and I called Jimmy so we could meet up. Jimmy and Brenda had this kind of friendship. They were practically siblings back then, and we met up for drinks, and they talked and hugged. It was a very sweet moment. On my way home with Brenda, she had told me I should be careful with Jimmy because she saw the way he was flirting with me. I never really cared, because I also had a crush on Jimmy, but seeing as I was married then, she saw it as a problem. I saw her point, and I decided to limit my relationship with him. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was going to try. William still didn't know I was seeing my high school crush behind his back, and it went on for some time. Jimmy could ask me out to get drinks and catch up. I could accept every time because it was an outlet for me. He was someone that I knew for a long time. 2 months later, Jimmy asked me out officially on a date, and I turned him down. I was married, and I was trying to commit to my marriage, but in my mind I couldn't bring myself to tell anyone, because they could show me the reality of my actions all along, and I didn't want to face it. In my heart, I felt I hurt his feelings because for the next few weeks I never heard from Jimmy. It was as if he was angry I turned down his offer. I tried calling him, but to no avail. Months later, I received a call from him saying he had business to take care of, and he had been occupied ever since I didn't really believe him, but I decided to go with it. I was just happy I got my friend back, and we were going to be on speaking terms again. We talked about meeting each other at the end of the week. William and I at that point were in a good place thanks to our therapy, but I never really got over having Mel as his assistant. I could see her working late hours with my husband, and they were getting close. He kept telling me he had nothing to do with her except work. I didn't believe it because I had seen them in a bad position one time, but I decided to let it go. But I never spoke to him about it. If he could be that way with his assistant, I had every right to consider Jimmy's offer. If me accepting his offer of a date was going to keep him in my life, I will gladly consider it. I got to the restaurant when I saw Jimmy waving at me. I went to meet up with him and we hugged. He introduced me to a lady who he called his girlfriend. I was shocked because I thought he had no girlfriend, and that was the reason he was asking me out, but it turned out that they were not in a good place, and he thought he could move on with me. His girlfriend Ella was aware that me and Jimmy go way back, but I didn't understand why she was always looking at me in a certain way. She could always talk over me whenever I was trying to talk to Jimmy. I got to know that Ella did not like me, and I was not a fan of her either. She was all over Jimmy, and it felt like she was trying to mark her territory, and she could kiss Jimmy in front of me and make out. It was worse because Jimmy was actually encouraging her to do it. I was jealous because I had come there with the intention of telling Jimmy that we should try going out together. But since he introduced his girlfriend, I didn't know how to go about it. It went on for a while, and I didn't like it. Jimmy kept on inviting his girlfriend to our usual outings. I didn't see the need as to why he did that. There were days when Jimmy could flirt with me, and his girlfriend got the wind that we had something at some point since then. She had seen me as her enemy. I didn't really give her attention, but she kept throwing shades here and there. I was tired of her drama and thought it was time to get rid of her. I planned to get Jimmy alone in order for me to talk to him about us trying a relationship. I was feeling so left out because I had my chance, and I blew it. I was very jealous of the way Jimmy was with Ella, because I never got that with my husband William when we were dating, and even now we hardly see each other. And when we do, we don't see eye to eye. I got to Jimmy's house, and I saw that he was alone. We talked for some minutes, and I told him how I felt, and he asked me what changed my mind, and I had to explain to him what was really going on with my husband. I needed closure, and William was not giving it to me. Jimmy agreed for us to try it out since we have always loved each other. I had to ask about Ella too, which he said she doesn't mean anything to that he had always wanted me. Unknown to us that Ella was listening to our conversation and she was going to use it against me. I got home and I felt at ease. I was gradually going to be happy again with the man I have loved forever. My crush on Jimmy goes beyond anyone can comprehend. I was genuinely happy, and I haven't been for a long time with William. It varies from one problem to another. He never listens to me, and he does whatever he wants. With Jimmy, I am heard, respected, and appreciated. I was getting ready for bed when William walked in. I felt like I hadn't seen him in days, so I decided to speak to him about where he had been for days. He ignored me like usual. After a few minutes, he told me that he kept seeing me with a guy he didn't know, and I quickly said that he was a client and we were working on something together. I knew he didn't believe me because I saw doubt in his face. He had his suspicions, but I didn't understand why, because he was literally doing the same thing with his assistant. William didn't know Jimmy, and I am happy because it's going to stay that way. I went on numerous dates with Jimmy. We kissed a few times and it was very beautiful. There were days we were joined by his girlfriend, and in those days we just talked casually with no touching because she was always all over him. We could discuss random things and we could talk about how we were in high school, and we could laugh. I could see that Ella was feeling left out because she could grow quiet anytime we start discussing. I didn't honestly care because I didn't want her there, but I had no choice. We were all having lunch one day in my favorite restaurant when I saw William walk in with his assistant. I tried to hide, but I failed miserably because he saw me and walked over to our table. We exchanged greetings and I told him I was having lunch with my friends. I didn't say who Jimmy was, and I was happy he didn't press further. I totally ignored Mel because I didn't care about her. William told me they were there to see a client and they left. I felt like that was really close, and at that point, I didn't know that Mel was going to put some ideas in William's head. I got home and he started asking me about the guy I was with. He kept saying he had been seeing me with him for weeks now and he didn't want to say anything. I had to explain to him we had nothing going on except friendship and work. But he didn't believe me and he kept shouting about how I wasn't loyal and whatnot. But I had to explain to him that he was literally accusing me of the same thing he was doing with his assistant. Like usual, he left mid-conversation, and I was so angry because he had always done that every time. The next day, I knew it was time to put an end to everything because I had suffered enough. I met up with Jimmy and told him it was time for him to tell me where we stood concerning our relationship. I told him we had to stop our hide and seek and start the real thing, to which he asked if I was ready to leave my husband, and I said yes because I was very tired already. He told me he had loved me from the beginning when we were in high school, and he had waited to be reunited with me, but when I got married a couple of years back, he decided to let me be, but he said he took a chance, and that's why he came looking for me. I was happy he said that because for years I had longed for what we had, and now I want it again. I brought up the issue of his girlfriend, and he told me he had no girlfriend, and that it was his own way of making me jealous in order for me to realize my true feelings. I told him it worked because it contributed to opening my eyes to see what I had been missing. Jimmy took me to his house after our discussion, and it felt right for us to take our relationship to the next level. We kissed and we had a beautiful night together. The next day I got up early to make breakfast for us. It was official that I am back with the man I had loved since high school. We were cuddling when Ella walked in on us. I knew she was hurt because of the way Jimmy broke it to her, but honestly I didn't care because she had tortured me for so long. She knew I liked Jimmy, but she still robbed it in my face. Ella left Jimmy's apartment in tears, and Jimmy told me I shouldn't worry about it. It should be over in a few days. I left Jimmy's apartment, promising to come back later. I got home, and I saw William and Mel working. William asked me where I had been, and I told him nowhere, but he kept on saying he feels I am cheating on him, and I was offended because he was asking me that in front of his assistant. I ignored him and went to our room, because this was what Ella wanted for us to have issues, and I was not going to give her that satisfaction. A few weeks later, Jimmy and I got stronger. We went on romantic dates and shared lovely moments together. It was a dream that came through. I got home after a wonderful evening, and I saw that William was at home. We had not been speaking for weeks now after what had happened, but I never really cared, and he didn't either. But I was still mad that he didn't give me care. I thought he was going to fight for our marriage. I got inside to see him looking angry, and he told me he had found out about what I had been doing for months now. I didn't believe him because I thought he was bluffing, but he said a lady called Ella had walked into his office saying I was cheating on my husband with my high school crush. The same person he had asked me not to see. I told him I was in love with my Jimmy and that I was done with the relationship at that point. I told him he could file the divorce papers. I am also tired of him going out with his assistant and also not committing to me. William made sure to put me down, saying how horrible I was and that I am going to regret what I did. I walked out of the house and I never looked back because I was free and I was going to reunite with someone I loved. Update. Hello, guys. So right now I am happy with my life. I have been able to settle down nicely with my boyfriend Jimmy, and everything has been going on perfectly. Sometimes I think back to everything that has happened and I feel like I should have handled some things differently. I know the way I acted was way out of line, but I was fighting for my happiness and I wasn't happy with the marriage I was in. After that day, William filed for divorce and it was handed to me by his assistant. Funny, right? It turned out I was right all along. She had eyes on him and she finally got him. I was happy because she could have him. I wasn't interested in being together with someone who couldn't respect me. At least they were together and they complemented each other. Life is full of surprises, and at the end of the day, you can never really tell what happens at the end of the day. I guess I've seen my own fair share of life's surprises, and I've learned as much as I can. I hope the future is better. I can only hope at the end of the day.